everyone, it's Maddie.
And me, and today we're going to be doing a video that we have been excited for years.
And that is a read-along of the Selection series by Keira Cass, the original trilogy.
This is our favourite series of, I'm going to say, all time.
This is our Hunger Games.
Yeah, we just love it a lot, and we've read it a couple of times, but we've never filmed the process, and it has been several years since we read it last. We're going to record our reaction, finally, to this gorgeous peak series.
When this series first came out, there was a lot of judgment towards the main character as annoying and conceited and not fun at all, and then also just about the series in general, it being a guilty pleasure, so not many people could come out and say that this was their favourite book because it was about romance and girls.
I think it's more the fighting for a male's attention that's
questionable.
Yikes. So we're going to choose to ignore that subtext and instead just focus on the world building, focus on the romance, and just enjoy. Let's get to it.
I forgot that there was a love triangle in this because the other guy is just so irrelevant.
He's not an option from the very beginning.
Yeah, but we have to pretend that he is for this book at least, and half the next one at least.
Do the pages finish at the same point?
Oh no, snake pit, there's snake pit. Who would have thought those words would have been on the first page of the selection? I think it's very odd to consider artists low down on the food chain. Because you should
be feet earners, as it were.
Exactly, and you should be, in real life, you have to earn a lot of money to be able to afford lessons. Oh, we no longer qualify for this.
A single woman between the ages of 20.
It's going on about how the new Isle, Ilia, was a mix of America and China. Would it not lend itself to Maxon then being mixed race?
We can hope. I wasn't going to fall in love with Prince Maxon. Well, you got another thing coming.
With very little convincing, America has joined the selection. She's put her name forward.
And it's actually something that her boyfriend encouraged her to do, and I'm not sure I understand the logic there.
Get the money? Are the girls paid whilst they're there? That she can send money, or I think the families get some riches or nice food.
That's the kind of actually security that we like in a love interest.
Yes, so indeed it is. But we all know, I think, from books that if you're with someone at the beginning,
you're not going to
be with them at the end. So she's just had her picture taken for her selection ID, and it's just before she finds out that Aspen has intentions to marry her.
I guess it's quite antiquated that she wants to get married and wants to have children, and that's her goal that is outlined in the first couple of chapters.
Yeah.
And there's also been quite a lot of girl on girl, not hate so much, but definitely criticism and judgment of how other girls present themselves and what is seen as the most attractive. I think hopefully those problematic elements will die down as the book goes on.
It's surprising how, even though she's living in this dystopian world where she wants to marry into a caste lower than hers, but they're still thinking about children, it's wouldn't you, in the world that you're living, knowing how hard it is, be nah, I don't want kids. So she's still very traditional, and I feel you can definitely... It's got this book has a lot of Christian influences.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
So you have to be aware of that.
We're at the chapter now where they announce the girls, I guess, who have got into the selection. And, I wonder if America will be one of them. America now has used her money to buy food for Aspen. And he said, "This isn't right. I'm man. I'm provider. I can't possibly take food from you. You woman, stay in kitchen."
You have to laugh because that's terrible.
Those are actual words on the actual page.
It has such conservative views. The bit that we just had, she's getting all hot and bothered because Aspen's come to visit her in the bedroom. They're kissing, and then she's like, "Another reason everyone married young. Waiting is torture." So in this world, can you not have babies unless you're married?
Yeah, it's built in. They said something about birth control as well, not being
able to control things.
Yeah.
So that's weird that they've made those sort of backpedally steps.
More questionable content. So America just had to declare that she was a virgin for the prince. I don't know what would have happened if she wasn't. They were
she wouldn't have been allowed, virgin or not. She makes a weird comment when one of the other girls on the screen, she's like, she had brunette hair and looks more experienced.
And she's about to say to her mum, "Don't you think she's a bit
what?"
The royal guard or something, whatever, has come to explain the terms and conditions to America, says that she has to agree to anything he asks, that she can't reject him, even if he makes advances towards her. And then she tells Aspen about this, and he's like,
"Oh, well, if he has sex with you, then you can't come back to me." Maybe this series
whole
is actually getting to the bottom of why we like the selection. Because
it has to get good at some point. I mean, we're only 80 pages into the first bit, so...
I was kind of afraid that this would happen, that we would read it
and read into it too much, and then
Yeah.
we just like talk ourselves out of liking it. But
thing is, I really like America's character. I think she goes through some good development at the end to be like an advocate for herself, truly
Yeah.
caring about the issues of like her world rather than
Yeah.
being self-absorbed.
there's some good thing, and like Maxon's a nice character. We haven't really met him yet. There's so much more to come, and it's mostly with the world building and the theories behind why choices have been made that I have a problem with.
What else we've learned about the different factions, let's just go ahead and call them. So 1 is royalty, 2 is military, 3 we don't know, 4 is factory work, then 5 is artistic,
Yeah.
6 is servants, 7 is servants but outside, and then 8 is homeless.
Yeah. And I'm like, where does that work? Like, I guess maybe 3 must be like bankers or business people.
Yeah.
And do famous people exist? Because
the
if
concept
you're,
of celebrity.
if you're like famous within, if you're an actor, then surely you're not a 5.
No, but acting would fall under
Under
5
5.
in terms of the arts, so
You pull one thread and the whole thing
Thing
unravels.
falls apart.
But
that's so true. Maxon has now met America. They've stumbled across each other, and she's performing very much not like other girls.
yeah, she's the epitome of the not like other girls trope. I forgot a highlight of this series were the maids that she has. They're just like a grounding female presence for her. They're a reminder of home because they're 6s, so more similar to her than Maxon would ever be. She's not used to being in a position to give orders to anyone or to be waited on, so it's truly her life flipped upside down now.
Yes, and she's already coming across like the people's princess because she has that kind of sensibility.
Yeah, humble vibes. What he has just had is first impression roses.
Indeed, and he just ditched 8 girls immediately. But America has struck up a deal with him that she won't compete for his heart because she has no need to or desire to be in love with him, and she will act like his confidant in the group and try and help him figure out whose feelings are genuine, because poor Maxon doesn't know if they want him or they want the crown.
I don't understand what his insistence on the whole calling her my dear thing is.
I'm special, I'm different, I want to wear trousers. We have 25% left to read, and some things are developing between Maxon and America.
Yep. So they had their promotional shot,
Yep.
and she was living. She was very casual. She wasn't forced like the other girls. And then we've just had the bigger interview portion, and she's really proved herself to be a contender.
She is exposing Maxon to what goes on in the caste system and how the class divide is so stark between a 1 and a 5 and an 8.
Yeah.
And so Maxon's like, oh, we should change
Oh
that.
my goodness.
So I think he's going to dismantle society. The other girls are all very jealous of America. They can
Yeah.
sense that she is succeeding in ways that they might be failing,
Yep.
and she's being sabotaged as well by Celeste at any opportunity.
The other girls have tried to start emulating America, so they don't wear as much jewellery, they wear more like casual dresses, and they've all started to wear blue, which is America's signature colour. So then on the night where they're being presented to the public, America decides to wear a red dress, and then Celeste is like, that's mine, take that off, and tries to accost her, which I think is about as villainous as it gets.
Yeah. It's very pageantry.
Yes,
Evil.
pageant vibes.
Yeah, so I must have read a little bit ahead then. So they've had their first kiss, and Maxon is like head over heels for her. It's
100%.
odd that like there's really no other option for him, and we're not even done with the first book yet. But he's
Yeah.
like, I love America, I'm ready to give my heart to her. He's waiting on her to decide to love him, and then as soon as she does, then he'll start to have feelings for other girls.
girls.
And then suddenly America's talking about Aspen like having other options.
Oh yeah.
And I've been with
Yeah.
other girls like as soon as she left, and I'm like, not really the vibe I got from him, but
Also, the other thing that was mentioned is that the girls who aren't chosen, because their status is now, was it a 2 or a 3?
3, I think.
A 3. May wrote to America to say that those girls who have already left have already been married off to like celebrities or politicians, and it's just like, really, why? Aspen would know that. Like, why did he send America knowing that then she would
Yeah.
probably be made for another like high profile match?
he wasn't thinking, obviously.
No.
He lost her from the very first chapter.
We have that little amount left, so
We power on. Last night we finished the selection, and quite a lot happens in the last 40 pages.
Aspen joins the royal guard, and America's confused by his presence in the palace because now it means her love triangle is
Her love
right-
arrow.
Yeah, her love arrow is in front of her. And
Maxon is all in.
properly declares to her, first of all, he's culled the amount. We're not going to have the Elite 10, it's the Elite 6.
I forgot that. I
Yeah.
forgot that they chopped it.
Huge cuts. And he essentially says to her, like, if you say that you could love me for the future, then I would have you right here, right now. But you're still not in it to win it. So I'll
wait
just
for
keep
you.
you around and wait
Yeah.
for you.
The other girls, he was like, fan favourite, like,
Political
internal
alliance.
yeah, internal alliance, good family, whatever. And then America was like, and the one I love.
Mm.
Have they spent enough time together to warrant that, or does America just act differently from anyone he's previously interacted with? And
Yeah, I
he's
guess so.
confusing that difference with,
Yeah.
I love her.
We see why America would be a great leader, because there's a rebel attack on the palace. So the selected and the royal family are taken to some sort of like internal bunker situation. And America's like, I'm taking my maids with me. They deserve to come with me.
The maids are also like, once we get to that room, they'll turn us away. Like, these people have no hearts, and they'll just be like, go and get
you've
shot
gotta
by
go.
rebels.
But she fights for her maids to stay with her and to be treated as actual people rather than servants, which is successful. And I
Yay.
think the queen at that point is like, I want this girl to be the queen too. It's a very thrilling end
Yes.
to the book, I think.
I think I always considered The Elite my favourite of the trilogy when I
I
reflect
really
on it.
can't remember what happens there.
I think more interesting things happen than in this one, because this one is so focused on like setting up the whole conceit of the selection.
Yeah.
And I think this one focuses a little bit more on like the TV element of it, whereas I
Right.
don't think that's as focused. I think it's more like it becomes more Princess Diaries and the girls learning how to be rulers rather than
yeah.
being TV personalities.
This is true. So on to the Elite now.
I've read the first quarter of The Elite, and basically all that's happened is they've had a Halloween party, and Maxon has further reiterated that he's all in with America, and she feels the same way about him. So I'm kind of like, how do we get another like 500 pages worth of content across this book and the last one? Aspen still somehow sees himself as a contender, which seems ridiculous, and she's definitely like more bothered by the fact that he's dating other girls, and the girls are being more secretive about what they do with him, so they're keeping their relationships on the down low.
I forgot we also had meet the parents.
Oh yes, the parents came to the palace rather than him going to their hometown, so slightly different than I was expecting, but he's basically asked America's dad if he can marry her, so you know, full steam ahead.
And there's like the social climber aspect of her brother as well, sending that letter. I don't know whether he has anything to do with the rebels later on.
Ooh, what an interesting and probably underbaked idea in this book. Day 3, and we're 50% through The Elite.
So much has happened, it's kind of difficult to know where to begin. We've had an escalation in the rebel threat, so
A couple of times. I'm kind of thinking, lock the doors.
lock the
How are they
doors.
getting in?
Yeah, it's really interesting that it's just from America's perspective, because although it feels threatening, you never really get to the nitty and gritty of exactly why.
Yes.
Like it still manages to stay superficial, even though it's meant to be like really the peak tension of the book.
So the next chapter, right after where we finished off yesterday, was when Marley and the guy that she was seeing covertly were exposed, and so they had a like hanging set up.
But they were flogged.
Yeah, it was like stocks maybe. And America was completely distraught at the idea of Maxon being able to just sit and watch.
But obviously you can tell that America's soured towards him now that he's let that happen to essentially her best friend.
And anytime she goes off Maxon, she warms towards Aspen. So it's like a constant push and pull between them. It is getting a little bit annoying though, because
A little bit.
I don't like their actions, especially after an event with Marley. They're acting exactly the same way that she did by like still being together
I know,
and
it's
like
like,
towing
do
the
you wanna
line.
get caught?
Exactly, like they know the consequences now, and it's like,
Yeah.
why do you think you would be any different?
Public have also soured towards America, which isn't great, but the rebels are excited about her. The scene we just had is when they're sort of fleeing the castle because the rebels have got inside, and America scurries up a tree and she sees the rebels come through and they notice her, and instead of anything, they just like curtsy at her. So this is where I think maybe is it to do with her brother, but I can't remember. So in a very Princess Diaries situation, she now has to plan her own royal function.
The juxtaposition between like the frivolity of like choosing cakes for events and then having to hide from terrorists is a little bit
Not great.
What we've established at the end of this book is that the first book is about America being in the selection because her family wants her to be. This book is about her being there because Maxon wants her to be, and then the one is about her because she wants to.
Be. That's a good way of distinguishing.
Maxon is definitely progressing with the other girls, and he has to have this huge like conversation about his intentions with each one of them so that America doesn't get too jealous.
Funny how it like does really replicate The Bachelor, and how they're like, are you having relationships with other women? And it's like, that's the point of the show. He always pins his relationships with the other women on America's faults. So he's with Chris just in case America dumps him. He needs to have
Another
someone,
option.
yeah, to replace her. And
Which is
Chris
so
is the
nice.
most agreeable. He's quite like, nah, I don't care about Natalie or Elise, even though Elise would make the most sense for like the family or the royal family's progression. And then with Celeste, he's just like, look, you don't kiss me enough, so I need to get it from somewhere. He was really tiptoeing around that conversation.
It was odd because he was like, I respect everybody's decision not to get with me, but also like, why aren't they getting with me?
He literally says, if she's going to use me, I'm going to use her, to Celeste, which is like, yikes. Oh, the big thing is that she makes like a spectacle of herself by suggesting that the castes should be abolished. And then the king's like, who does this girl think she is? She must be taken down. And then there's another rebel attack, and she's with Maxon. And Maxon manages to fabricate this story that America saved him. So that kind of warms his father to her, but only a tiny bit. He's still like, I've got my eye on you now. Also, the king's abusive.
Yes.
So that's why we have to forgive Maxon all of his actions.
Yes, and he was actually doing things behind the scenes for Marley, which meant that she wasn't as like in danger as she first was.
Yep.
So America had to then backtrack and be like, no, I don't hate you, because she's very quick to say like, I don't love you anymore, or
And she's always like, I was such a fool.
I think the end was really good in the fact that I was quite convinced that America was going to leave.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I can imagine if you were reading this series in real time that you'd think, oh, this is intriguing. I don't know what the third book is going to be,
Yeah, I
because
agree.
she has to go. She also has a moment, I think everybody has to, when they're in a love arrowhead, where she steps away and says that she has to consider herself and give herself some time to not think about either boy. All she's been telling them is that she's confused the whole time and that she doesn't know, and she's not giving herself the space to actually think about who she wants.
Aspen fully believes, he even says, aren't I the only choice? Delusional.
I think it would have been a more interesting thing if she actually did go home and
Oh,
then
yeah.
somehow got called back to the
Called back,
palace,
yeah, me too.
rather than never having the chance to leave that space.
Lastly, we have the one, I'm surprised that all of these books have been like the same amount of
Consistent
pages
length,
as
yeah.
well. I think someone dies in this, at least.
All I remember is a court scene.
The only thing I remember is, don't they visit the rebel camp or something?
Would you like to talk us through what's happened in the one so far?
Well, I've read almost 200 pages, and you're
A little bit behind.
a little
I'm
bit
lagging.
behind. The thing that I predicted to happen did happen, and that's like they go and visit the rebels to try and get a sense of what they're about and why they kept attacking the palace. It turns out that they have some like sort of claim to the throne, but they were never attacking the palace because they wanted to cause harm to anyone inside. They just wanted to collect these journals.
What video game are they playing?
Exactly.
We've
And
had Celeste's redeeming conversation.
Oh my gosh, yeah, Celeste, she's just like 180 immediately. I guess she's seeing now that she's unlikely to win, so she's aligning herself with America. And it's kind of like, I've liked you this whole time, like I was rooting for you to win. And what we're really seeing is that the king is just absolutely grim. The point I'm up to now is him saying like, just call it off. He's sort of fed up with all of the selected girls, particularly America, who literally just keeps showing him up and showing him up. This time she makes a spectacle because they have to do a condemning.
This is the scene I remembered from when we read it last time.
Okay. Oh, that's what you said, like a court thing.
scene, yeah.
Yeah, so a guy comes up and says that it's just petty theft that he's a criminal for, and she's just like, so she takes off all her jewelry and gives it to him, and then is like, go and pay the king and then your debts are paid. She's using the fact that she's from a lower caste to be like, you don't understand how hard it is. But I think the king said something really interesting, that she wasn't from a low enough caste to inspire people.
And we're done with the one!
Yay! Which is actually the one good thing I can say about the selection, is there's not a boring minute. The
very
books are
happy.
as long as they need to be, and there's plenty of plot points like always happening. I never felt like there was a particularly dry chapter or any filler plots. Some of it may have been slightly repetitive, like there are certain actions that America takes every book that kind of puts her on this sort of rebellious front. But
It made me laugh in any kind of occasion that she had where she was presenting to the public that they always put her last in the lineup. And it's like, surely they should have learned that she will make a spectacle.
it's so that they can cut the cameras. One of the things that annoyed me about this story is that we learn more about the Northern Rebels. We get to know at the beginning of this book, and then we have some reveals about characters that have been Northern Rebels all along.
Really good reveals as well.
Yes, I kept thinking it was her brother, but it turns out to be her dad that's invested in the rebellion.
And also another of the selected,
Yes.
Chris, who had no personality despite being really nice.
That's the thing I'm annoyed about, because it almost gave a sort of like Harry or Neville situation where it's like, well, if they were both gonna be sort of rebellious, then why wasn't Chris trying to do what America was doing?
Well,
exactly. The whole thing, you know?
That's true. I hadn't thought of it like that. I think it was funny that with Celeste and some of the other girls in part of the selection, you could really tell that they were acting, but then Chris was so genuine. I think that's why it comes off as like a huge twist that she wasn't.
Right. And Celeste turns out to be a real G, so
I loved her at the end. It's such a shame what happened to her character. And there's like no chance to mourn her either.
Oh,
like
God, yeah,
the thing is,
yeah.
everything happens probably in the penultimate chapter where people are dying and the rebels are fighting and like bleeding out. Important characters are bleeding out before your eyes. And then afterwards it's just the epilogue where America and Maxon are getting married, and it's like, should we just deal with the traumatic repercussions of watching your best friends die, please?
Yeah. This one was more entertaining than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I thought that.
I think the second one is probably still my favourite in terms of the moves it makes. I found the romance between Maxon and America particularly tedious in this one.
I don't think that any character besides America shows a lot of growth in this whole book. I don't think Maxon changes. I don't think Aspen changes. Anyone besides Celeste having her like, whoops, wasn't I a bad guy?
Yeah.
None of them have a moment where it's like you can see them being different at the end. And that makes it kind of dissatisfying.
Also, I didn't really understand why Maxon loved her so much right from the very beginning. I kind of wish that their relationship had been
Slow build. You'd think with all the competition there would be more difficulty, but really he was always about her.
Yeah.
And we weren't given enough information about the other girls to
really
root for
care.
them.
And when we do start to care about Chris because she's nice, then we're hit with this like, well, she was a Northern Rebel all the time, so.
What on paper could come across as a really frivolous series is actually quite political.
I'm pleased that I still liked the series upon rereading it, but it will probably be years before I reread it again. Like, I could think of it a little bit more critically than I did when I was 17.
Thank you so much for following us as we've read the selection series. Let us know in the comments what you thought of it if you've read it, if you've read The Heir and the Crown, and what you thought of those as well, because I'm probably not going to taint my memory further of this series by reading those.
No. Thank you everyone so much for watching, and we'll see you in our next video.
Suddenly I see polka dot